Works. Good morning, folks. It's a little Friday afternoon for Friday morning string. Got some little lanterns to make. These are a pretty simple, straightforward kind of project. 3 mark centers, because we start between centers. These blanks have already been drilled. You'll see when I flip it over. Got the blank pretty square. This is one of these projects where some of this has to be a little bit more particular as far as the squareness of things, because we have 4 holes drilled. So this block is pretty as square as I can make it easily. I don't get super fussy with it, but if you get them too far off, then the holes don't match. They don't line up. We just start between centers. Just use a step center. There's no point in putting drive teeth in there. It's not very long that it's in this fashion anyhow. Do I need to? It's probably easier if I started out with the longer one. Won't need it for a couple of minutes, and the rest of it will be short. So for first order of business is to get it round, as usual. Should look at one thing before I start even. Okay. Good. I think. So between centers, multiple ways of turning something like this around. I could use a spindle roughing gouge. I sort of like my skew for this. Just makes it a little quicker, a little easier. Simple peeling cut with this wheel. What we're going to do is get rid of the corners. Be a little gentle where the holes are at. As I look straight down, you can see the ghost image underneath it that we're not round yet. I'm just sneaking a little bit closer, try and get it to the round, or at least really close to it. Not quite totally round yet. The only place that really matters is down here. And part of this up here. But we still have to put it in a chuck. Close enough to round. Still a little flat spot somewhere, I can feel it. Yeah, there's one. Just a little one. At this point, like I say, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. We'll get a tenon down here to grab it.
mic loose? Okay. The drive center. Get a chuck. Use a small chuck. This is a VM100. Standard jaws. And it is way bigger than what it needs to be diameter wise, but it doesn't, at this point it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I'm going to bring a tailstock back up, loosen it up just a shade, and put that point back in her to make sure that we stayed on that center point. That is kind of important. And now we'll go back to our short tool rest. The big one will get in the road with the chuck. So now we need to get it around, at least down and up to about there. And then we can proceed. Didn't need much. Now it's true. Now we got to clean up this end down here. Or at least part of it anyhow. We can still do that with a skew or a little safer. Not fairly decent with the skew, but when it comes to that cut right there, and I want to go in fairly far, I don't always trust it. I want to undercut this slightly. And knock off that razor blade edge right there. Make sure it looks like it was undercut. It could be a little bit more. A lot of this goes away, but that'll be good. Now we got to drill a bunch of holes. It's kind of the gist of this project here is there's a lot of holes to drill. I did not get my drill bit out, I don't think. It's sort of a big, ugly, old drill bit. That's a much taper one. It's this one. I think it already has a mark on it. Yeah. From a previous encounter of doing these. The reason I drilled this hole, and this hole is by no means going to be nice and neat and pretty and all that stuff, because this is a really old, kind of like public sale find drill bit. It's all sort of chewed up on the shaft of it, so it's not, will not drill a nice pretty hole. I'm going to slow the speed way down around 600 RPM, something like that. Just so that it doesn't work so hard. That's the simple one. Yeah, I gotta get an inch. The next one's an inch and 3/8. I don't even know what that one is. 7/8 maybe. Inch and 3/8 ones. Takes. Unfortunately, this is the one that gets used in a lot of things, so it's sort of showing its wear, so to speak. So bring it up so it just doesn't quite touch. Too much quill out already. I want to keep the quill back as far as I can so that I'll just gently tap it up till it touches it. That allows it to register itself because it no longer has a center point. Big one wander a little bit. Nothing we can't clean up. Just gotta be careful where it breaks through. And loosen it up. I'm going to come in through because it's not going to touch in the middle because of the holes. It's going to touch at the top. I'm going to drill that in pretty much just about as far as I can go. 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch up there. That's our holes drilled. And I'm also looking, if you get these off out of whack as far as squareness and stuff like that, these become different sizes. It looks like we did a half decent job there. So that's a plus. Put the drill bit away. Drill bit gets quite warm quite quickly too. Now, I didn't get it. Oh, I didn't get a tea light out. Let me go grab a tea light quick.
Because these get a little tea light in them. And of course, they're already out. So the little bit of an issue with the tea lights is they're not, for one, they're not parallel. They're sort of tapered inward, so they won't fit. And if we went to that one, doesn't work. Move this over a little bit. So they don't fit in the hole. So we have to expand that hole out and do a little bit of other work up in here. So the easiest tool that I found is just a simple scraper, traditional scraper. Watching lots of Richard Raffin and that Thomas, I can't even begin to pronounce his name. He's sort of mimicking what Richard is doing. And this does work quite well to do this kind of stuff. Put my tea light up there so I know where it's at. And we want to come in above center with this so that it doesn't, if I come in right on center, the bottom of the tool could actually hit the sidewall, and we don't really want to do that. These things actually got to be opened up a fairly good amount.
But we can sneak up on it. We can go straight ahead with it. If I lean over the lathe a little bit, I can sort of judge whether I'm going in straight, even though it doesn't really matter with these, because I know they're tapered. So I'll give it a little extra taper at the bottom, just so we get sort of know where the taper fits right. It starts to go in on the taper, so probably if we just continue that taper upward. And it actually cuts very, very cleanly on the sidewall as well, where I have a different one, not quite big enough yet. That's a negative rake. The negative rake, of course, would be much more forgiving than the traditional scraper. It also didn't give me the cleanliness, I guess you would say, of the sidewall. We're just about there. We'll make it a little bit deeper, maybe a little less taper. These certainly by any means don't have to be super fussy with them. I just want it to fit reasonably well. I will use a little bit of
5-minute epoxy and glue them in once the thing is complete. We still got to go a little bit farther. This thing's got little tits that stick out the bottom, so you gotta. I want it to go the whole way up in there because I want somebody to be able to do it either way, either sit it on
a table or whatever, or hanging on the tree. I do put a screw eye on the top of it. A lot of this is sort of there we go. I could even go a shade deeper yet. I'm going to try and make sure that that's well up in there. Plus, if I go deeper, then I get more of the little flame doodad thing up towards the top. You just want to leave a little bit of a little shoulder up there. There we go. So now that'll give a little bit more. Looks like I could even go up just a shade more. Really just need a place for it to stop up there. As well as I can make sure that this is smaller in there than the outside. Keep that little edge away. This scraper is actually sharp on the side too. I'm not sure it's necessary, but it does work.
And it's by no means an expensive scraper. That's a piece of steel from Amazon. So you're talking about a scraper that's I think less than $15 or right around the $15 mark. Fair amount of grinding on them, but take your time and do that in like stages or whatever. So now we're going to be able to see the flame up the top, and we're sitting well up inside of it, which is what I wanted it to do. So from there, I don't really have a bunch of handles for these are all 5/8. Oh, could have left that alone. That other one's a 1/2 inch. Okay. So I like to take and whip inside up in here and round this a little bit more, because it's, you may not really be able to see it very well on the camera, but where the drill bit comes down through, and I drill about halfway through on all four sides to eliminate the middle part, it leaves a drill place in there, a curve where the drill bit was at. So I like to get rid of that. So I come in with the, once again, this is a scraper. This is actually a negative rake scraper. I'm not sure it would have to be a negative rake, but it is. So, and I will go in here and clean out some of that stuff. I'm going to be cutting about center. Pretty good. We'll try it, see what it does.
And you'll actually be able to see just what I see, because I have to lean forward and literally look in the holes as they come around to see what I'm doing. Not that you can't do this by feel, but I just find it's a little easier if I just lean forward a little bit. I can see my curve develop. And go into the center, make that more of a cone in there. And the whole time I'm looking through the holes that I've already drilled, except when they get clogged up with chips and such. All out. So I think that looks pretty good. It's just a matter of taking it. You don't take much material off in there. It just gives it so that it's not such an abrupt kind of edge in there. Is really all I'm after. I think I could take just a little bit more out of it. Tiny bit more on the top. Top wasn't, I'm not really totally concerned that the top is not super clean.
Definitely looks better than, just a drill bit hole in there.
I think that works for the bottom. I have to keep talking to myself because it's been a while since I've done any of these. This has been scraped clean, but it needs, could use a little tiny bit of sanding just on this end grain. Make sure that corner is nice. Just hit it a little bit. These will get dyed and sprayed with shellac and all the good stuff, which you'll get to see. That's what we're going to do. My son-in-law has been giving me a hard time as to why I would come down here and work. This is typically what I do on a Friday if I don't have other commitments. Would be to come down here and work, usually for the majority of the day or a good part of the day. So we're going to string this today. I can probably, so I'll put this up. This is a cone center for my live center. This is sort of a disposable kind of a cone center. It is a piece of resin. And all I'm doing is just putting a little pressure on it. It's just going to keep this from being able to flex down here while we do this part up in here. And then we'll flip it around and do the top. providing I can find the things that I made to do the top, but I think we will. So mine, I like the beads on them, and I generally will use 3 beads. Problem with the magnetic tray is that other things become magnetized. So we'll go back to strictly overhead. You could even come in a bit. This is a D-way beading tool. This one gets used a lot. It's actually about ready to go over to the grinder and regrind it. But in between, I just hone it. I got a ways to go yet. On a diamond hone, just hold it flat, run it back a couple times because you want the points to be nice and sharp. Almost looks like I'm getting. See how well it cuts. We might have to grind it. The problem when you're doing honing stuff like this is you kind of have a tendency to lift up as you come back. And it sort of looked like I was starting to round these little ears over in that direction, and we don't want to do that. So we'll go back up to full speed. And that's the rest of the little also want it to be over. This beading tool wants to cut on center. It's tilted down at a pretty steep angle. That should work. It's easier if I get out here on the end. So back up the tailstock away so that I can do that. I guess I could have went to the other end. Yeah. Go to the other end. See if this handle's going to get in my road. Not really. So I'll mark the 3 beads first. Just touching the point. That way I can come back over with the right point. Sit it in the groove and mark the other one. And we can take them down a little bit at a time on each one. Or we can go the whole way down. That really doesn't seem to matter. It's squeaking at me. The other thing that's good with these, is sort of mark a line in the center. That way you know when you get to a full bead. Because these are not meant to continue on and remove material. They're strictly just to make a bead. When I get the line starts to disappear, then I lift the handle a little bit, and that's where it becomes a scraper. They're sort of a scraper anyhow. So we do that little bit there. And I do want to squeak on my tails. Live Center wants to squeak a little bit today. Don't like the squeakiness. So now we need, and I'll do it before I do anything else, it should be about 1/4 of an inch. So we want to come up above. On the top side and mark a line. Another 1/4 of an inch. And a 1/4 inch of line all around. And then we'll make a bead. I make a bead up here. That'll be part of the roof. So we'll just drop. This is just a single bead up here, so it's just a matter of dropping it in. That's all we need with our beading tool. And yes, if you were so minded and wanted to get a little chippy on that one. Go back over that a little bit. It's kind of a bit of the pain of when you use an ash. And every once in a while, some of these places want to be a little bit chippy. So I just reduce the diameter of this just a little bit. Just make them flat again. And then we'll redo the bead. All they do is wiggle it back and forth. Like I say, it's not. And there's no handle on it. Never really found the need to have a handle on it. The only thing you have to watch is when you pull it back out that you come back out straight. Because it's the only time it'll catch is if you would come out on a little bit of an angle. So that's pretty good. It's as good as I'm going to get them. It's the open grain on the ash is what causes the little bit of an issue with them. So we'll raise our tool rest up because I will go back to the skew for the majority of this right here. Make a V cut into the bead. Same way with the top one. And we'll just sort of start to make this a rounded shape from the center down to the bottom. Do the same thing at the top. And you certainly don't need to use a skew for this. You could use whatever, spindle gouge or something. Works just as well. But if you don't like the sand, and I don't like the sand that really well, this is going to leave me a surface that I'll pretty much hit this with like 320 and 400. And sort of step back away and look at our profile. I just want a nice gentle curve. I don't necessarily have as gentle of a curve as what I'd like. So I need to come back up in here and make this, it's almost a little flat right there. That's what my eye shows. And else I didn't. Yeah, much better. And off that little whizzer right there. There's usually one down here too. And if you leave a little V in there, it doesn't hurt anything. It gives it a little visual interest in some ways, I think. It just makes it a little easier as well. That little V will get eventually will get filled in with the grain filler. I think it looks alright. Like I said, it's been a while since I made these. I made a bunch of them back in the fall, figuring they would be a good craft show kind of seller, but you know how that goes. If you think it's going to sell, it usually doesn't, and they didn't overly sell very well. But as things will always go, we did a couple of the springtime kind of craft shows. I used some cloth back sandpaper for this part. This is 320, I think. Kind of a challenge to get in there. All I want to do is break that edge where I went in there and cut. Once again, it's just try and keep things, because there's always going to be somebody, especially like a little kid or something like that, they get a hold of one of these, they're going to stick their fingers in there. I'd rather it not be sharp. And some of this is one of these projects that you almost have to do some of this stuff as you go, because as you proceed along, you can't necessarily come back to some of this. The other thing, I used to mess around sanding in here too, but I don't. It's actually smooth enough with the Forstner bit that it really doesn't need sanded in there. Inside them, we will break the edges off, of course, but the sandpaper needs to be refreshed. So, are we good enough to start? Nah, probably not. No point in trying to, it sounds good to just start at a higher grip, but you always miss something. Here's kind of the little bit trickier part of sanding this stuff, because that hole's in there. You just don't press very hard. Actually, I need my dust collector. This is ash. I'll be coughing like crazy if I don't. You could also use a longer piece of sandpaper. I'm using the cut edge and fold it over up against there. Like I say, when you cut it with a skewer like that, it doesn't take much. Let's start with 220. All the grips. I can hit the beads a little bit. The beads don't require much of any sanding. You really don't want to try and stand too much at them, or you'll mess them up. There could be some little fuzzies up on there. That's the little bit of 600. So we don't have any sharp edges. We don't have any, shouldn't have any torn grains, so we don't have to deal with any of that. Go back to my 400. Just use it, basically roll it over my finger. And then I can sand these. As I rotate it around, then I can do the opposite side. All I'm looking to do is break that edge. I don't want a giant sized rounded edge. I want it to be crisp and clean, and I also don't want it to be a razor blade. Always make wrong at the moment. So now we're going to flip this around. Hopefully I can find I know I had made a little drive thing for them. I made them. Should have looked for that before I started this morning, but that's where we're at so far. One? No. It could be. There. That's one. That's why you sort of save, when you do any kind of spindle work and stuff like that, you save these little bits, pieces. It actually fits quite snug. So that is the one I was using, at least for that part of it. So that's going to be how we're going to drive this. And we're basically going to go back between centers. So we'll bring up the tailstock. Once again, everybody always started teaching some classes, and everybody's like, well, how much pressure? How much pressure? I'm like, enough to make it drive. That's all you need. And it's just a friction drive down there, so we're not going to be super aggressive up here. We can't be. We don't want to be. We want to enjoy what we're doing. And then we'll make the top. There I will actually do a combination of things. I will start out with my bowl gouge. Just by virtue of my bowl gouge will allow me to remove more material quicker than a spindle gouge would do. And as you see, we've done everything between center, and this is pretty much running true. So we go up here. What we're doing is making a curve. Because this is the style that I do. There was plenty of other things you could do for the top coat, I'm sure. It's a little bit bigger of a bite than what I should, but as long as I go at the pace that the wood wants to be cut, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it. The tool rest is still just a shade high, though. So just work my way back. And I didn't try to pick up that cut right on the edge of this place up here. I actually go behind it a little bit and use the wing of the tool and get a hold of it. You see, these can be any size you really want. This length started out at about 5.5 inches. Figuring I am going to lose a 1/2 inch up here because of the point. Never a good idea to move the tool rest while the lathe is running. That's what I'm trying to teach the people that are taking classes with me. You know, don't do things that could cause you a major amount of aggravation and knocks fingers. You know, something like this would cut you, so we don't want to do that. So we need a ball of some sort down here, and let's say back about there. Gotta have some room to move down in there. So let's say our ball's going to be we can't break this loose. Or we'll have nothing to drive it with. So now we sort of have choices. Oh, actually looks a little too big to me. We'll go back up in here somewhere. And we'll start to bring that down. And very careful when you get close to the ball. This is still the bowl gouge, so the bottom wing could very easily hit that. So the last little bit you do with the spindle gouge. Go right up to the ball. Get rid of that last little bit. Step back and see. It looks like we're a little bit lumpy maybe. I'm more interested in how whether the ball could be a little bit smaller. Like I say, I don't know that I have any of these that make two of the same. Just clean it up a little bit. A little rounder than what it was. Maybe make a little cut across there. I had a little bit of this there. This, in all reality, this will be the most sanding that I have to do will be on this part right here, which is what we're going to do next. Sand this. I don't think how I did them. I think I used some tape. I think. Because I want to be able to cut that free and be able to sand the top of it. I think if I remember right, I think the tape had a tendency to want to pull some grain out. So if we're going to sand, we're going to have dust collection. Keep our lungs in the right perspective. And we'll slow the speed down considerably. Once again, if I did my job correctly and did it well, I'm still starting with 220. So I almost could use a little bit more here. Have a couple little bits of bumps in there. Be careful what you're touching, but remember that edge right here, that little overhang of the roof, I guess you'd want to say, is very, very sharp. You're going to need to use a cut edge and sandpaper so it won't make a groove down in there. Like I say, I do these, like you'll see later on, stick around or whatever, you can watch. That'll probably be this afternoon. I will turn this black before I go for lunch. And as you'll see, I'm using black shellac to do it. I know that's not something you can go buy at the store. It's just the seal coat shellac that I will be using. All they did was put some transparent black dye in it. In order to do the grain filling, you need a dark background. And you'll get in darker than black. So that's generally what I do with these. And at 600, I'm going to sneak in that little blue. I'm also going to round that razor blade there. As well as get my bead as best as I can. And pull a piece of tape from there. Use some painter's tape. Try not to go over as many. Put the tape on with the rotational lathe, that way this tail end piece up here doesn't come flopping around and carry on. So now we'll cut the rest of this off. We'll do it at a much slower speed though. Get it down to a little bit of nothing. Take your good old time doing this. Very gentle, very limited pressure going forward. Allow the tool to cut. We're down to less than 1/8 of an inch down in there. There, it broke free. You know the tailstock didn't stop. Spin it off a little bit. This is going to get a little bit of a hole in there anyhow. I will put the live center back up. Should be good enough so it will stand at. You can see it's not running perfectly true. Speed down. All I'm doing is putting a little pressure on with my left hand, because really the standing force is going back towards the headstock. And we only have just that little bit out there to stand. Now, if I hold it, you should be able to put that little point somewhere close to center. Not perfectly centered, but that's okay. You don't know the difference. It's just a marking point where I will put the little screw eye. I did a very good center point in there. See if I can remark it. Now it's just going to be back in the same one. Just going to live with that. I think where that little bit drill bit's at. Right. There. Oh, I needed one of those. That's just and I'm going to use what they consider a pin vise. Now I have a little mark in the hole. Remember, these pin vices just do not hold a drill bit really well. I want to try and drill at about the same depth as what the
Right, shade deeper.
should work. I don't normally put the screw eye in at this point, but I think it'll be a little bit advantageous if I do. Need the one that can hold it in. It's going to ruin that in. You see what the problem with putting tape on there, it's pulled little bits of grain out because the ash is the open grain. Probably just touch that a little bit with 600. Just on the top edge, just to make sure. And that's what our lantern looks like so far. So now we're going to turn it black. Just take me a couple minutes to get some stuff situated. I have another little piece.
Hey, what do you need from the grocery store? You streaming? Oh, sure.
What do I need from the grocery store? Want to come say hi to everybody?
What? She wants to go see.
Hi, kid.
Okay, I'll take it. Are the people here? Hello.
Yeah, look at that one. Right there.
There she is.
Say, there's my granddaughter. Say hi.
No one's even talking to you.
Nope.
Is there even anybody watching?
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Hey.
No, I figured I'd just have leftover pizza. What are we having for dinner?
Hamburger, red
Okay.
potato, corn.
Okay.
Pretty good to me. What are you making?
Lantern.
Oh yeah, you said that. Oh, that looks good.
Little dusty.
Cool.
You go grocery shopping? You go grocery shopping?
There's tape on there. The other ones must have been a little bit sloppy on that fit. Well, this I need to fit snug. That'll work. Once again, it's just to hold it while I spray it. I will spray the shellac right there on that. So this is going to take me a minute or two. I got to get my airbrush because I'm kind of lazy when it comes to some of this stuff. I don't necessarily call it lazy. I call it using the equipment that I have at my disposal. And I did purchase an airbrush a while back. So it does a nice neat job. Nice and simple. Sort of easy to maintain. Looks like I didn't do a very good job cleaning the airbrush though. could be an issue. Let's see. Nothing a little denatured alcohol doesn't take care of, because it's everything I use in this kind of stuff is all alcohol based. So I should have a lid, just paper towel. Thank you. It's a little lantern. Like I said, a little fresh alcohol deteriorates the little bit of gunk that I had around the lid. I think where my little container is at. Right from the nose. Can zoom out a bit so it's not quite too much. I just use a little drink container and I'll dump that in there. The alcohol will evaporate very, very quickly. Even that amount in there leaves all the gunk behind, but it sure does. It's like #1 solvent for me. I think that'll be clean enough. Anything with using the alcohol is whatever you, paper towels or whatnot, you want to open them up and lay them over top of the garbage can or what have you. Don't leave them rolled up in a ball, because the pure alcohol like that is very flammable. And I should have gloves on because I just got black on my fingers. What's new? Like I say, it don't get much simpler than that to keep the stuff clean. It's just a little bit of alcohol and spray it through it. Now we'll go to the shellac. It's wonders of the little airbrush. I actually bought a little airbrush compressor. It comes as a whole kit. They're like $100 and a quarter, or $130, $40, something like that on Amazon. They're quite reasonable. Actually come with several airbrushes. I don't use the high-end airbrushes like I know some people do. Now this is a Cool Runnings, something like that. I think that's what it was called, Cool Runner. As far as the airbrush, the compressor. I'm going to go get another glove because I know I don't really want totally black fingers. I like this. I found that I like this style of airbrush for what I use it for.
because I'm not trying to do fine line work with it. This is shellac that has black dye in it. Maybe get my towel, which is somewhere here. I think I used it for something else. We have another ugly towel. Cover the lathe bed up. I will turn the dust collector back on because I don't want a cloud of. I don't really want a cloud of shellac floating around, or I have more things to clean otherwise. The first order of business is do the inside of the holes. This on nice and slow. Nice light coat. Let it dry for a little bit. As I can see, there's still some white spots. As you can see, as I spin it around, the white colors in there are the open grain. That's what we will fill with the grain filler once the shellac dries. This will take probably about half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. I don't want to go. I don't go after it too quickly. The other way of doing this is to dye it black, and you just go with the shellac over top of that. But I found it actually easier to do. Just go straight up black with the shellac right off the bat. It's kind of like one less step that I have to do. So now, if I would have brought, be right back. I'm going to get a hook because what I'm going to do is take this. I'll take it over in the other room. I have a room off to my shop where I do the. I build cabinets. I spray the finish and things like that over in this other room. So that's where all the hooks are to hang things. If I'm really lucky, I should be able to get that off. It should slide off of there, I hope. I don't necessarily want to leave it on that mandrel, so to speak. Get some things out of the road so I don't send them flying. So we'll just take that over and hang it up, let it dry. And
recess there, if it matters. You see how much of that went up underneath that? That's the concern, that you don't want to leave it on there, or it will possibly be on there longer than what you want it to be, like permanently, because it would adhere to it. Now get rid of our gloves. I have 2 of these to make. I also have a ice cream scoop to make, but I think the ice cream scoop's going to be this afternoon project. I'll do the grain filling on these. This is where some of this becomes a little bit time consuming in a way. Do one thing before we start over. Just stop the recording, because we're recording this because we're now doing some YouTube videos as well. My son-in-law's doing the editing of the YouTube videos. So we'll just start over. We already have another blank drilled, ready to go. The person that wants one wants the purple one. So I might as well make 2 of them, or make a purple and a green. I don't have any craft shows till fall now, so these are not exactly priority, but I got material out this morning and cut the blanks, so I might as well do a couple of them. While I have the stuff out. Because once that other one dries and we do the grain filling on it, then I'll go back and let that set up for an hour or so. And then put another coat of shellac over top of that, and then usually just 1 coat of lacquer on top of that yet, and then they'll be done. So they should be pretty much done today. At least that's the hope, that I have the one done today. Because the person that wants it, I have to go over to Woodcraft tomorrow. So I'd like to be able to send him a message and say, you know, come and get your thing. I'm going to be there for an hour and a half or 2 hours, so just save me a trip, because he lives over close to where that's at anyhow. So back to square one. I need to clean my face shield. It's quite dirty. Quite dusty. I had another one. This one is some red. I got some red grain filler. It's really meant for scrapbooking or something or other. But I couldn't get it. It didn't cooperate. It dried instantly on me is what it did. I think I have this sanded back far enough. Or not. Brownish black in there.
do believe. It's kind of a failure because you won't be able to, probably won't pick it up much on the camera. But like I say, it like dried instantly. And it's sort of a water-based product, and I couldn't figure out why it really wanted to dry as quickly as what it did. But I think it's a very neat color of red, but just didn't. And it's another one of the deals. You win some, you lose some. Well, that's kind of a loser there as far as I was concerned. So we're active between centers. We use our spew. It's really just a simple peeling cut. And it is, actually did get it to, I think I got it pretty close to being round down there. Yeah, just barely. That's all right. Barely's good. Oh, no, we didn't. There's still flat. That sort of has become my go-to tool for taking square spindles down to the round. There is certain ones. This ash doesn't do too bad. You see that it sort of chews it up a little bit, but the part I need is not chewed up. We need a tenon to get a hold of. And we can go back to the chuck. These are these are kind of in the same line as some of the other stuff where spend more time drilling holes and all that good stuff than you do turning. Because that's a lot of what this is drilling holes. Some of which I drilled on the drill press. These holes here are all drilled on the drill press. I'm doing good. It's Friday. It's my day off. I deserve a day off. Actually, I didn't have to work quite so hard this week, but it also looks like I did do what I think yeah, let's try it. That shoulder should be a little bit undercut, and it's not. See if we get a vibration out of it. So we're not quite true down here. That's what I'm getting vibration now. So that's trued up. Go to the spindle gouge, undercut this a little bit. Our corner goes away. See whether this is going to cooperate to drill the holes. That's going to be there's where that'll pick up a vibration. Especially with the ugly drill bit, which will slow things down, way down, about 500-600 RPMs. I found this just helps the Forstner bit a little bit. If I drill this kind of big ugly hole in it. Mechaform would probably cringe on something like that. I mean, that's just a giant sized twist drill bit that I got at a public sale. Actually, I even cut some of it off because whatever they had it in, it was all chewed up down there. But I'm not a metal worker, so I don't have a way of re-truing that up. So just leave it as is. It just cleaned out a whole lot of material so that my Forstner bit does not have to work as hard. It does work. Somewhere along the line, I saw somebody talk about that, and I'm like, well, that sounds like a good idea. Because I'm drilling straight into end grain. So it doesn't necessarily like it very well. If it has to drill out that entire whole big mass in there, the whole way through. And it keeps the bit from getting quite so hot. But unfortunately, that's an 1 3/8 drill bit. That seems to be the most common drill bit in the Forstner bits that I use. So needless to say, it gets a little bit more of a workout than any of the other ones do. So we can switch over to, sorry about my reach, gotta remember to reach the other hand. With the hose. Got to see a little bit more of what we're going to do. What we're going to do down here is we're going to go back to the scraper because we have to open that hole up in order for the tea light to go in. Because that's what these get in them. This is just a little simple tea light, battery operated tea light, of course. Absolutely, we could move that back there. Yeah, that'll look a little better. If anybody's watching Richard Raffin, he loved. This is a traditional scraper. The only difference is I've actually ground a little bit of a bevel on that side as well. Although he says you don't need to, but it does make it work really well for this process. So as you can see, tea light is not even close. Everybody's running away from me. As I said, it's not even close to going in there. And they're tapered. So that we have to address both of those issues. This is set above center so that just that front corner is actually cutting. And this is sort of somewhat blind turning in a way because I can't see what the tool's doing. I have to. This is one that's forcing you to look on the other side. So I'm looking over on the right side. So we're getting closer. It's pretty good. It's what when you do multiples of these, you sort of have a tendency to get things closer quicker. Lots of starting and stopping, of course. Not quite there. Got a little bit more of a taper on than what the light does. So if we go from out here, straighten things out a little bit. Down to the bottom. This I want to slide up in. I don't want it to be a pressure fit. I'd rather use a little bit of glue, a little bit of 5-minute epoxy or something along those lines. But I do need the tea light to go the whole way up in and disappear, because it has little buttons on the bottom. I can even go up a little bit higher, because I really would like to light the, I guess, the flame part of it. I want that to stick up above the top a little bit. It just leaves me a little ledge up there. Really all it's doing. It's going to bump up against that ledge. So that should be more than enough there for that part. And the traditional scraper, oh, I need to do the bottom here yet first before you get carried away. Traditional scraper is a little bit of a there's a learning curve with it, for sure. Taper that in a little bit. Sharp corner goes away. So that it's going to sit on this outside rim. But the advantage of that versus like a negative rake scraper in there, it does a much cleaner job. I mean, it's not going to get sanded any way I do it, either way. So that's a nice snug fit. And our little light, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be a little bit above. Stick up in the hole. So I've only left about maybe 3/16 of an inch in there. Could probably even leave a little bit less than that, but so I get in here and round some of this out, because the drill bit leaves me an area in there that I don't like. It leaves us like sharp points in there. So the next thing is to go in with a little bit of a this is a scraper as well. This one is a negative rake. I made it into a negative rake before I really knew what I was doing, and I kind of wish I wouldn't have, but it is what it is, and I'm not going to run out and buy another one just because I use it for these little things. Hopefully I don't stick my head in front of you. But all I'm going to do, and you're seeing the same thing that I am, because I am looking down through the hole to see my tool. So I'm trying to give that sort of a nice little radius in there. Let's stop and take a look. That's the only way you can see it. I try and take about enough out that I have about 1/8 of an inch sort of a flat in there. Just looks like we're there. And we did a pretty good job drilling the holes. Because if you get these holes, this needs to start out as pretty much as close to perfectly square as what you can get it. And then carefully mark your holes. Otherwise you can end up with different size gaps in between here. That's kind of the only tricky part of them. And then up there where I drilled that hole, I make that sort of cone shape. And that's sort of just because. That's really all I can say about that part of it. Just an extra little detail that sort of shows that you cared enough to take the take the minute or so out to do that. So that looks fine. So while I'm at it, we have to sand this little bit in here that I just rounded over or cut them sharp corners off. I take and go in there with some cloth back sandpaper. This is 320 grit, pretty much just because that's what I have in it. And it doesn't, you're really not going to see it anyhow, because you turn almost all this black. It probably would be kind of interesting at some point maybe to try and, not quite sure how I would do it, but it'd be kind of interesting to turn this inside part, you know, a silver or something like that, or a white that would reflect more light. But it sounds like a job that I'd have to give to my wife to try and reach in there and paint something. But leaving it natural, sort of natural wood in there is going to give it a reflective capability too. Like I say, there's just certain parts of this you need to do as you go. Like sand this little bit down here at the bottom and knock this sharp edge off. Because it's the only time you have access to it. Because from here we're going to flip it back around and basically go back between centers. And it is the bottom, it's end grain, it's been scraped, so it's 320 and 400, and pretty much call that good enough. So now we'll go back to our friction drive. Let's see whether, yep, still good and snug. It's just a little block that I've made. Usually I use lots of these little blocks. Be like a sort of a jam chuck type thing. Get some of the dust out of there. Looks like I should have sanded a little bit on that edge. Yeah, missed that part. Once again, I can't go back. So if you miss something in there, then it just leaves a little fuzzy edge where that stopped at. Actually, I don't think I did that on the other one, so that'll come back to haunt me a little bit. Little piece of sandpaper on a piece of dowel rod with just take it over to the bandsaw or hacksaw or whatever and slice it. Then I can reach in there, I'm not using my fingers, just to get rid of that little ledge, little fuzzies from where I stopped cutting. Now we're ready. Because that would show in the finished piece. Back on there. Tailstock support. I couldn't turn it otherwise. I think the last one I actually did the beads before I flipped it around. That wasn't something I needed to do though. Like I say, it's been quite a while since I've made any of these. And I sort of had a good process how I was doing them. So if we did everything right, it still should spin true. It does. So now we got to get it down to the round. Simple peeling cut with a skew. It is close to being round. And I really only need the bottom of it round and a little bit above. So that's round. Not overly flat. We'll bring our tool rest up a little bit more. And we'll just make a skim cut with a skew. A little bigger up here than we are down there. You have to be careful when you go across them holes. It's going to have a tendency to cut quicker because there's not much material there. That looks okay. Might as well go lower a little bit. Just because it could be all round. That one can be tapered because that's all going to go away. Like that. Bring our tool rest back down. And do our cheater move. That's what you want to call it. Sort of what I call it is my cheater move. Or better yet, that I have the luxury of having some simple little tools to do the job and make the job easy. It's just a simple, go back to there, simple beading cutter, the D-way beading cutter. This one's a 1/4 inch. So we can make some perfect nice little beads down here. So we'll mark them. I marked the first one. I used the left-hand point, stick that in the hole, move it a little bit over. Because if you make the complete bead and try and make one beside it, you won't make out very well because you don't know where the bottom of the bead is at. So if you mark them first, it does a much better job. And just to the round. And if we don't know where just to the round is, which you usually don't, I can just put a tiny little pencil mark close to center. And actually didn't get that one down over there quite as well. So there's also the wonders of having a wooden friction drive down here. I'm going to go back in with the skew and cut, because I left a little ridge down there. So I'll go back and clean that out. So just wiggle back and forth, comes to a bead. Make sure I got the first one to a bead. And now, this is also how the people that are doing the basket of illusion kind of stuff, this is the tool they're using. A lot of them use actually a smaller one than that yet. I use the 1/4 or the 1/8 inch one, I think some of them do, which is just too small as far as I'm concerned, but those people have more patience for that than what I do. So I'll mark it. I want the same spacing there on top and bottom. Is it absolutely necessary? Don't know, but I do. So I'll put a second line on there and not get confused which one's which. Beading cutter also likes to be out on the edge of the tool rest so that it can be pointed down, because it's pointed way down towards the floor. So if it's up further, it doesn't work quite as well. So this is just a single bead. A little wiggle back and forth. As you can see, it cuts left side, right side. Let it cut. Pencil line's about ready to disappear. I lift the handle just a little bit. and becomes just a little scrape cut. And that's all there is to making 5 cute little beads. Now, can you do that by hand? Sure. Is it going to take you a lot longer? Absolutely. So, some of the things that I may do is in that concerning mode of speed. Because I work for a living. So that takes care of that. And most of the time, now the ash is going to be the sort of the exception to the rule. It has a tendency to tear them up a little bit there. That's why when you use the beading tools, almost all the people that are doing the basket stuff are usually using hard maple. There's some other ones that work quite well with it as well. But the ash has a tendency to, it picks that up a little bit right there, and it'll always be in one little spot where it sort of chips it a little bit. If I go back to my skew for this kind of work, just rounding this down into that bead, the bottom of the bead, do both sides. And you don't have to use a skew for this, but I can tell you this much: if you spend a little bit of time and learn how to use the skew, the spindle kind of work like this, it's worth its weight in gold, because you start sanding at 220 or even 320 if you did a really good job. Now step back and look, because what I did was I sort of rounded these closest to the beads down first, and then I'll go back further, more towards the middle, and sort of blend them. Down like so. You'll find it's just like a spindle gouge. There's one side of a bead that you do is easier than the other side, even with the skew. Do these have to be a perfect bead? Not really. I think it looks good enough. Actually, and this blank started out 2 1/4 inches wide, or square. These are 1 1/8 hole. I think I tried it with the 1 1/4. You start getting to where these get really thin. Of course, I could thin this down more, and the thinner this goes, the thinner these become. But then it becomes more fragile. A little V cut for up here for the roof. There again, if you get used to using the skew for some of that stuff, especially something like that, it just makes it, I mean, that's basically that V cut in there, that's a non-sanding kind of a cut. I mean, I won't even, maybe 600 or something like that. It just cuts it that cleanly that you don't have to sand as much. But I am not the skew user that does any long coves with it, so I go back to my bowl gouge. Because we're just basically making a big long cove. If you notice one simple little thing that you could try at some point, you notice the tool, if you're paying attention, my tool was actually up above center this whole time, because I don't need to get to center at this point. So if I'm above it a little bit, it'll actually give me a little bit cleaner of a cut. This is also, as far as I'm concerned, much easier and more efficient than as if I was going to use a spindle gouge for this. So I'm able to take a bigger cut for one. And the bowl gouge doesn't really complain about going into the end grain, where a spindle gouge doing that cut does sort of bite you a little bit. I'm going to have to bring, now once I get down to this point, now I got to bring the tool rest down a little bit, because I'm getting closer to center. Also go behind this little V cut that I made up here, pick up the cut. And now that gave me a razor blade edge in there. And just stop short of that end, because we don't want to run that into pure end grain, because the bowl gouge would have a tendency to grab hold of that, or at least chew it up at best. So now we have a nice simple taper. We'll need a ball for on the top. There I go back to the spindle gouge. Get rid of some material by the tailstock. We need to know where we've got a point sticking in there. Simple 3/8 inch spindle gouge. Kind of my go-to spindle gouge. Most of the time if I'm doing things that I'm doing something with a spindle gouge, it's going to be smaller work. This one here actually has a very small handle on it. I'll show you here in a minute. I had the people in my class, because that's use the tools at Woodcraft, but I usually take mine along. And I had them doing, it was sort of a beginner type class, so they were doing spindle work. And the spindle gouges they have are the traditional, I think they're Slurpees. Leave a little V groove in there, just as a little detail. I don't like that. But they're, you know, those there's, you know, somebody feels that they need to have a long handle on them. And I let them play around with that, and there was a couple of the people that were sort of want to take it kind of serious as far as turning goes. And the one lady talked about making some small, like, Christmas ornaments type stuff. And I'm like, well, so let me get you my little spindle gouge out. You can play with that. And she's like, oh, well, I gotta have that. Because there's my entire spindle gouge. I have to back out just a little bit. As you can see, it's only about 1 foot long, maybe, all total, if that. I don't even think it is that. Yeah, it's just 12 inches long total. That's tip of the tool to the bottom of the handle. That way it's in front of me. I don't need a big handle getting in my road. This is always directly in front of me. I find it just makes it easier for me to see what I'm doing. Especially when you want to do fine detail kind of work. Looks like we got some bumps. So do we go back after the bumps? Yeah. Those little bumps would stand out probably just as easy, because I may put more in. Good enough. Sand, as I was telling them a lot I did 2 classes, I'm like, we're looking for a sandable finish. No torn grain, no giant ridges or anything like that. So that's what we're looking for. That's the point I stress to them, or anybody for that matter. Now we'll go and sand. As I said, we cut everything with a skew, so now we get to start at 220. Lower speed down. I'm going to use the cut edge of the sandpaper, this little piece of paper folded over. To use the cut edge up against the beads in here. That way I'm not messing up the bead. That little cut edge will go right into that corner. Sandpaper's cheap, just use a lot of it. It's just like your cutting tools. It's all sandpaper. I got ridges there. I'm going to go back and use some 180. Just for this part up here. I had a piece of the chart. And this is sheet sandpaper. This is something I source locally. Really a good sandpaper though. Got a ridge right there. Needs to come out. Doesn't look necessarily huge right there, so if we start out with a little coarser sandpaper, we can remove enough material quickly. Make it more the shape that we want. Just be careful touching it, because that little edge right here is a razor blade. And it just continues to get more of a razor blade the more I sand. Once again, cut edge into that crack, into that groove, so that we don't mess it up. Get as much of that bead as I can. Can't get the whole way into it, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. Light pressure. Remember there's holes in there. last but not least, will be 600. We're going to hit the top of the beads. Maybe try and get down alongside of them a little bit. Like I say, they're cleanly cut. There may be some little lines in there from time to time. And knock off this sharp edge. I want a crisp detail. So I don't do that till I get to the last grit. I also need to sand in these holes. I'll take that sharp corner off. Pretty much ready to take away. That would take a minute before I make a mistake.
I think that's good. A little bit of painter's tape. Probably should go get the good stuff rather than this. This is some cheaper stuff that I got. So I'm going to tape this fast to the friction drive, jam chuck, whatever you want to call it, because I need to finish up this little bead down here. So in order to do that, I need to, basically I'm going to cut it down to where it's almost nothing.
But I will need to sand that and such things as that. I will keep the speed down considerably. About 1,000 RPMs at this point. So I'll go in above it. Another place you could use the skew. Also a very good place that you could possibly have an oops and ruin a piece. So we're just about nothing. Yeah, we're not quite to nothing. You can see it starts to wobble as soon as I would release that. I could have left myself a little bit more room than I did. That should be just about to nothing. Just about to nothing. Not to nothing now. So now I'm going to use my left hand to support this. And really what I'm doing with my left hand is pushing back on it. Because this last little bit, I just literally put the point of the tool in there and I'm wiggling it up and down. Eventually, there we go. Because it's not spinning perfectly true right there. Because the tape keeps it from wandering off, but it's actually not a very big. It could be a lot longer in there, would give it more support. But it gives it enough to do the job, which is what we're after. So now we can sand this a little bit on the end. Use my left hand to support it because most of the pressure is going back towards the headstock. but there's still enough going sideways that it wants to move, wants to wobble. And of course, if it wobbles off, then it's going to cause you aggravation. So we'll go right through the grits again, right up to 600. And then while we're hopefully holding it reasonably square, I brought the tail center back up so I can put a tiny little divot in there, a little bit of a hole, because these get a hole drilled in them and the screw I put onto them. So get my little pin vise drill bit, which is sort of the right size for the little screw eyes. So now now that I have a hole in there, I don't have to try and find the center point. You gotta be very gentle with these little drill bits. They break very quickly. And they go in a little ways, clean them off. Kind of rinse and repeat. I always go on the side of too deep rather than not deep enough, because once again it's going to be a brass screw eye. Actually, I could use this. Yeah, we'll use brass. I say, because just like the other one, I basically will ruin the screw eye because I'm going to spray the shellac over top of it. Nothing says that I have to go the whole way in either. It's just enough to hold it. In the pain of the tape, it wants to sort of fuzz up some grain. So a little bit of 600 just right across the top of it. Takes care of that fuzziness. As you notice, I didn't let go of it because I could have brought the tailstock up, which would be the safer way to do it. That's our lantern so far. Now we're going to turn it black, and then we're going to go eat lunch. And then we'll have two black ones that we'll come back and do after lunch. And give them some color. One will be purple, one will be green, because I have a blue one. I don't have that many colors in the grain fillers. I actually don't make that many colors. So this should just slide up over there reasonably well. More than enough to hold it, because all we're going to do is spray some black shellac on there. Cover the bed up. Gloves. Black is black, and it will, even though it's shellac, it'll still dye your fingers black. At which point we'll use an airbrush to put it on with, though. Kind of another lazy man's way of doing it. Quick and easy is the way I look at it. This is just a seal coat shellac. It's a very thin shellac. Also doesn't have wax in it. Not that that really would matter a whole lot for this part. A little bit of wax isn't going to hurt it. But on the next coat, once I do the grain fill on them, the next coat needs to be the de-wax, because then I will spray a water-based lacquer over top of that yet, which will be later on today. So dust collector comes back on to suck the fumes into the hose. I have the shiniest inside of the hose that you can imagine, because I do this quite often. Speed will be very slow. First order of business is to get the inside of the holes. They do not look right if there's white in there. I don't necessarily use the grain filler in there. You're supposed to turn the dust collector on too, and you didn't. Oh well now. Pretty much as slow as what the lathe will run. Nice and light coats. We don't want any runs or any of that good stuff.
So we'll just give it a little bit of time for it to dry. Stop it low. Make sure we have a nice even coat. Looks like I have some little scratch lines in there and I could have did a better job sanding. They sort of disappear as we put more coats on. It'll actually fill them in. Go over it one more time. Continue to spin. Close the tip of the airbrush so it doesn't dry out. I should actually clean it before I go to lunch. Have another one that's a failure due to the grain filler that I tried to use. It was a suggestion from somebody from the Wednesday night Zoom group. Wanted to know whether I ever tried it, and I didn't, or I hadn't. And I ran into it, but it's sort of made for scrapbooking. But it doesn't, it dries too quickly. Doesn't give you a chance to wipe it off like the stuff that's oil based and whatnot. It's really simple to clean the airbrushes. All I did was put more alcohol, just plain alcohol in there, give it a little swirl around. I have a drink container that you can't see. Now you can see it's just an ugly drink container. I shouldn't do it right below that though. And spray a bunch of alcohol right through the airbrush. And I'll leave the rest of that alcohol sit in there until I come back from lunch. The drink container just has an opening. There's a bunch of alcohol laying in there right now. Probably till I come back from lunch. Most of that will probably be evaporated. I'll let that spin. I gotta go over and get another hook. Should have been smart enough to bring two when I went and got them earlier. Well, what I'll do, I'll take a hook
I'll hook it on there. I'll pull it off because there's a certain amount of shellac that gets underneath that, and if I leave it sit on there and dry, it'll dry fast to it, and then you have a hard time getting it off of there. So we don't want to do that because we got it to this point. You don't want to ruin it now. With the shellac, I want to make sure. I have tried to rush this already. It just doesn't. It can cause you trouble. It's better off to give it the hour or a couple hours, or even overnight for that matter. Come on. There we go. See, you just keep getting the buildup of shellac on this friction drive. There it is, nice and black, and you can see the light colors in the grain as the light shimmers off of it. That's the part that will fill with the grain fillers once this sets up and dries. Generally takes anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes for it to dry. So that's 2 of them ready. Like I said, we'll come back after lunch, maybe sand this a little bit. So I have some tape on there to actually make it stiffer. I'll just leave it alone, let it dry. But we'll come back, go grab some lunch. We'll be back in about an hour and a half. We will put do the grain filling part of those. And then I have actually I have an ice cream scoop that I need to do because I have wait till the last minute to do things. I have a demonstration at Woodcraft to do tomorrow on just that thing, a ice cream scoop. Doesn't look like there's actually anybody on Twitch that I know of. They're doing other work, so I think we're just going to end it, and like I say, we'll be back in about an hour and a half, and then we'll continue on. Thanks for joining in and watching.